Revealed. How I transformed a Christmas for 40 into an amazing journey of love and family. Sarah had always believed that Christmas was a time of magic, a time when laughter and warmth wrapped around you like a favorite blanket. Yet, at 34, living paycheck to paycheck as a single mom in a modest Midwestern town, magic felt far away. Each day she worked long shifts at the local diner, juggling to keep her 2 kids, Emily and Jake, entertained and fed. Their faces lit up just at the thought of the holidays, but Sarah's heart was heavy with worry. This Christmas, Sarah dreamt of something bigger than herself, a holiday dinner for 40 of her neighbors. Veterans, lonely widows, families barely scraping by. Everyone seemed to long for connection. The holiday spirit danced in the crisp winter air. But beneath the surface, loneliness loomed like a shadow. Sarah craved to host a gathering filled with laughter, love, and togetherness. Still, as she began the painstaking process of planning, stark realities crashed against her dreams. Stretching a paycheck to cover rent and groceries left little room for anything else. How could she possibly pull this off? As storefronts began to twinkle with lights and carolers filled the town with tunes of joy, she felt a flicker of hope. She envisioned the smile on the elderly widow down the street as warmth spread from the table, the camaraderie of veterans sharing stories, families reconnecting over a hearty meal. But the feeling of giving didn't match her circumstances. Then came a heavy snowstorm days before Christmas, the snow relentless and blinding, casting a white veil over her hopes. She watched as flakes swirled outside her window, each one a bitter reminder of the uphill journey ahead, and that moment of desperation, she reached out to those she once thought indifferent. With each phone call, Sarah discovered the hidden burdens her neighbors carried. There was strength in shared struggles, and she began to see cracks in their hard exteriors. Even the toughest souls could shine when they found solidarity. Yet, even as Sarah gathered strength from her neighbors' stories, another storm brewed in her heart. Could she really pull this off? Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. On the morning of the dinner, a world draped in white greeted Sarah. She watched the snow pile up, despair creeping in. Would anyone even be able to attend? What had felt like a beautiful vision now loomed large, an insurmountable mountain she doubted she could climb. She stood there, chest tight, heart thumping, longing for connection but fearing it might slip away. Casting a hopeful glance at the snowy landscape, she knew this was do or die, her chance to ignite community spirit against the odds. She wrestled with doubt, the love she had, the determination burning in her. Sarah whispered to herself, "This isn't just a meal. It's a chance for us all to be together." Would her determination prevail? Could a single act of faith bring people closer or plunge them further apart? The clock was ticking, but so was her heart, aching for connection. The true question lingered. What would this Christmas unfold? The sun shyly peeked through the thick blanket of clouds, barely illuminating the white-coated world outside. A familiar chill surrounded Sarah as she prepared the modest home for the gathering. Each item she set out telling a slice of her story. She untangled strands of twinkling lights, memories wrapping around her heart. Sweet scents of cinnamon and ginger drifted from the kitchen, fueling her hope like kindling in a fire. But doubt clawed at her. Would there be enough food? What if no one came? The empty chairs at her table echoed louder than the growing excitement she tried to muster. The only sounds filled her small world were the soft thuds of her children playing in the other room, bubbling laughter and playful shrieks. She wanted to shield them from her worries, to envelop them in the spirit of the holidays. "Mom, look at our snowman," Emily squealed, her face flushed with joy. Jake chimed in, boasting about their construction skills. Their laughter spilled into the hallway, unlocking a warmth in Sarah's heart. Just for a moment she allowed herself a grin. This was what she could give: joy, laughter, a place to belong. A soft knock on the door pulled her from her reverie. With her heart racing, she opened it to find Mrs. Thompson, the elderly widow from down the block, bundled in a thick scarf, her face brightening when she saw Sarah. "I brought you some fresh rolls," Mrs. Thompson exclaimed, her eyes sparkling. The weight of Sarah's anxiety lifted. if only a little. Here was the first sign of her neighbors rallying together. More knocks soon followed, a few faces she recognized, some she didn't. A steady stream of neighbors arrived, all bringing something. A casserole here, a pie there, each not only filling her kitchen but also the atmosphere with warmth and hope. Sarah's home transformed not just by the food, but by the spirit of kindness enveloping her. Between setting things out and welcoming new guests, she realized she was no longer alone in this effort. Neighbors who barely exchanged hellos were now sharing stories, laughter, and memories. The community she wished to nurture was already growing roots right at her doorstep. "Can I help?" Jake piped up, already clambering to dip wooden spoons into bowls of ingredients. "Of course, sweetheart. Just be careful," Sarah said, her heart swelling with pride. Her children were learning that giving was as important as receiving, that making space for one another was the essence of life. As the clock ticked closer to dinner time, a warmth filled the room, not from the oven but from the genuine connections forming among these people. They had come together, allowing their vulnerabilities to intertwine, breaking bread as they opened up about their own struggles and triumphs. Then, just as Sarah envisioned the moment where they would gather around the table, a sudden knock shattered the fading doubts in her mind. A chill ran down her spine as she approached the door. Steeling herself, she opened the door, revealing a group seeking shelter from the storm. Strangers or perhaps soon-to-be friends. Would these unexpected guests join the celebration or disrupt her carefully planned evening? The emotions swirled in the air, both hopeful and anxious. Would her spirit of giving extend even further? As she stood frozen at the threshold, Sarah felt her heart pound fiercely, sensing that this moment could shift everything. What lay ahead hung precariously, a bundle of hope balanced against the uncertainty. Would love and community triumph in the face of the unknown? The door creaked open and Sarah took a deep breath. For faces stared back at her, framed by layers of scarves and a few strands of hair windblown from their trek through the snow. A man, tall and broad-shouldered, stepped forward, followed closely by two children, a girl holding tightly to her brother's hand. "Excuse us, ma'am," he said, his voice a mix of apprehension and hope. "We were caught in the storm," and he glanced back at the children, who looked up at Sarah with eyes wide and hopeful. "We were hoping maybe you could help us." The warmth of her gathering inside felt far away, overshadowed by the chill of the outside world. But as she looked into their weary eyes, a flood of empathy washed over her. "Of course, please come in," she urged, allowing them to step into her home as she stepped aside. The chill wrapped around them as they entered, contrasting sharply with the warmth emanating from her kitchen, where the aroma of baked goods embraced them. Instinctively, Sarah's heart swelled. 2 more chairs would be empty at the table, but maybe there was a way to fill them with laughter instead. The children, bundled in oversized jackets, hesitated for just a moment, then darted inside. Their curiosity sparked a smile from Jake and Emily. "Do you want to help us with the snowmen outside?" Emily piped up, her voice bright and inviting, breaking the clouds of uncertainty hovering. The girl's face lit up with excitement, the tension shifting to bright-eyed enthusiasm. "Yeah, we just built the biggest one," she exclaimed, her shyness melting away. Sarah watched as her children led the newcomers outside, feeling the atmosphere lighten. She turned back to the man, who now looked somewhat relieved as the initial fear of rejection dissipated. "Thank you," he murmured almost shyly. "It's been a while since we've had a place to go. Everything is on the table. Help yourselves," she said, gesturing toward the kitchen. As they settled in and began to serve food, Sarah felt the joy building in her heart again. The laughter of children echoed through the house, a melody of connection, reminding her that the spirit of giving was reciprocal. As more guests filtered in, bridging gaps between neighbors and strangers alike, Sarah sensed that something extraordinary was unfolding. Stories were shared, hearts opened, and the table felt fuller and more alive than she had imagined. With each dish that made its way to the table, each smile exchanged, Sarah felt her worries dissolve in the warmth of this makeshift family. Then her eyes fell on the man, who had watched the unfolding scene with a grateful smile. The churn of emotions stirred within him, a mix of sorrow and joy. She could tell he carried a burden, perhaps a story he hadn't yet shared. Would tonight be the night he found the courage to open up? Just as she approached him, the sound of the door creaked open once more, and another familiar figure stepped inside. Tom, Sarah's estranged neighbor with whom she'd grown distant over the years. His eyes darted around the room, surprised by the gathering. Sarah's heart raced. How would everyone react? This evening of connection hung in the balance, a fragile thread woven through laughter, new friendships and old divisions. Would their journey toward community become even richer, or would it splinter apart once more? Her pulse quickened as she leaned in closer to Tom, her words trembling on the edge. Would he step forward into this newfound warmth? Or would the chill reclaim him? Tom stood there uncertain. The laughter and joy swirling around the room was a stark contrast to the silence he had experienced in his own home as of late. Sarah could see the conflict on his face, a mixture of longing to belong and a fear of what it would mean to reconnect. He shifted his weight from one foot to another, hesitating at the threshold like a lost wanderer standing at the edge of a welcoming fire. Tom, Sarah began, her voice steady and soft, reaching through the murmur of children and the clinking of dishes. It's good to see you. Hey, Sarah, he replied, his voice faltering as he took a step further inside. But his eyes fixed on the hastily arranged gathering. He hadn't expected this. The man who had entered with his children watched the exchange, sensing the tension. It was a bond of shared experience in hardship and a fragile peace resting in the air. Without breaking eye contact, he cleared his throat, almost as if to remind them that they were all part of the same narrative now. It's all right, Tom, he said softly, his voice steady. We all have burdens we carry. Silence fell momentarily. The weight of those words resonated with everyone in the room. Then Sarah saw it, a flicker of recognition spark in Tom's eyes. He turned toward the man, reading the painful truth behind his earnest gaze, perhaps understanding that they were all seeking the same thing. Acceptance, warmth, belonging. Jake and Emily cascaded down the stairs, calling for their mom. Mom! Come see. You've got to see our snowman. They tugged at her sleeve, but Sarah's attention was locked on Tom. In that moment, she could almost feel the life stretching between them, the possibilities fluttering like the snowflakes outside. With a trembling hand, she gestured toward the dining table, laden with offerings that were still warm, the moment overflowing with hope. Tom, please sit with us. There's more than enough food. And laughter, she added, the warmth in her voice breaking the ice that had long formed between them. Tom's gaze softened, though the apprehension still lingered. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. He took a breath, drawing courage from the atmosphere, and moved toward the table. One quiet choice unfolded before him, the choice to be a part of this shared experience, to allow himself to belong again. Sarah watched as he reached for the chair, the tension in the room easing slightly as Tom slid into his seat. Laughter erupted from the children, punctuating the moment with vibrant life. No way! Is that the biggest snowman ever? One of the kids shouted, words bouncing off the walls like joyous echoes. The man smiled too, his children's laughter melting away his own burdens, if only for this night. The power of connection was palpable, threading fingers together across the table, slowly weaving everyone closer. Yet, Sarah noticed the shadows still hovering behind Tom's smile, a silent plea for reconciliation, for a deeper understanding of the events that had driven them apart. Just as the conversation began to flow, a light-hearted banter about snowmen and holiday traditions, a knock echoed from the front door, sharp and sudden, drawing everyone's attention. Sarah felt her heart race again, wondering who could be arriving next and, more importantly, what this interruption would mean for the fragile bonds that had just begun to form. What if it was someone from the past, someone who threatened to unravel the warmth that had just started to bind them together? The knock hung in the air like a suspenseful note, dissonant against the warmth of the room. Sarah's heart skipped, caught between fear and hope. The laughter around her felt distant, like an echo fading into the background. Tom's smile faded slightly, replaced by a flicker of apprehension as he glanced at Sarah, searching for reassurance. Who could that be? Whispered Emily, her wide eyes brimming with curiosity. Jake leaned closer, enthralled by the sudden shift in mood. Maybe it's Grandma, he exclaimed, his enthusiasm palpable, but Sarah couldn't shake her unease. It's probably just the neighbors, she said, trying to inject some normalcy into the moment as she walked to the door, her pulse quickening. She hesitated, hand hovering over the doorknob, the question swirling like the snow outside. Could it be someone from the past? Someone who belonged to the shadows of Tom's life? With a deep breath, she opened the door. There stood a figure she hadn't expected: Evelyn, Tom's sister, her coat dusted with snowflakes, a hesitant smile warming her face. Behind her trailed a bottle of wine and a homemade pie, but her eyes betrayed an unease. "Hey Sarah. I hope it's okay that I just stopped by," Evelyn stammered, looking over Sarah's shoulder at the gathering. Her gaze fell onto Tom, who hadn't moved from his chair. The room felt charged with unspoken words, the atmosphere thickening with the weight of unresolved history. Tom's voice was barely a whisper, a mix of surprise and wariness. He remained seated, but the tension in his posture told a different story. "Tom, I thought I'd come over. It's been a while," and her voice faltered as she stepped further into the living room, the familiar discomfort between them resurfacing with every inch she crossed. "Why now?" he asked, the rawness of the question hanging between them. Sarah glanced between them, weighing the moment. This was a chance for healing, she realized, but at what cost? The warmth they'd begun to weave felt so tenuous, like a fragile thread. Sarah felt a deep desire to shield Tom, yet knew that facing this conflict might be the only way forward. "Maybe this is good," she said, trying to sound reassuring. "Maybe this is exactly what we need." Tom's eyes searched hers, doubt clouding his expression. Could they really confront the past here, in this small bubble of happiness they had all created? Evelyn stepped closer, her voice tinged with vulnerability. "I'm sorry for how things have been, Tom. I know we've both made mistakes. But I miss you. I miss us." The words hung in the air, weaving between the lingering laughter and the warmth of the food, sending a ripple through the atmosphere. Tom's walls seemed to crack ever so slightly. "You miss us?" he echoed, the skepticism evident in his tone but softened by an undeniable longing. Sarah felt the tension shift like the snow melting outside. There was a spark of vulnerability, a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, this Christmas gathering could become a turning point for them all. "Perhaps we can start fresh here tonight," Sarah suggested, holding her breath. "Let us share not just food but our stories, the good and the bad." As Tom glanced from Evelyn to Sarah, realization dawned. This was a chance not just to mend old wounds but to forge new connections. But before he could respond, another loud knock echoed at the door, sending a fresh wave of anxiety rippling through the room once more. Who else could possibly be arriving, and would they further complicate this moment? Sarah's heart raced again. Could they handle another interruption? Or would it push them apart just as they were beginning to draw closer? The room held its breath. Just as the warmth of rekindling connections flickered, another knock shattered the fragile atmosphere. "Should I get that?" Jake asked, but Sarah shook her head slightly. "No," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper, her heart hammering in her chest. This was too big. Would another visitor tear the fragile moment apart, or would they somehow weave into the story that was beginning to unfold? Evelyn looked apprehensive, shifting awkwardly as if sensing the tension pressing down like a heavy winter blanket. Tom's expression remained stony, yet a small part of him seemed drawn to the possibility of healing. Sarah took a deep breath, resolved to embrace whatever came next. The knock came again, more insistent this time. "Maybe it's just somebody looking to borrow a cup of sugar?" Emily suggested, half laughing but her voice quivering with uncertain cheer. "Right. In a snowstorm," Sarah replied, forcing a smile as she edged toward the door once more. With trembling hands, she opened it, bracing herself for whatever lay beyond. The chill from outside rushed in, and there stood another unexpected guest. Mike, their elderly neighbor, bundled in layers that seemed to swallow him whole. His eyes twinkled behind thick glasses, and his cheeks were pink from the cold. "Evening, Sarah," he exclaimed, cheerfully oblivious to the tension. "Sorry to intrude, but I thought I heard some laughter and wanted to see if you'd like to join me for some holiday cheer." In his arms was a tray of cookies, golden and inviting, the smell wafting into the room like a warm hug. Tom's face broke into an unexpected smile, and Sarah felt the atmosphere shift yet again, this time toward something lighter. "Mike, you're just in time," she welcomed, trying to pull the moment from the brink of chaos. "Oh, perfect," Evelyn chimed in, her own unease melting just a bit at the sight of the neighbor's jovial spirit. Jake and Emily rushed to help Mike with his offering, their earlier curiosity dimming under the warmth of sugar-coated cookies and the festive spirit he carried in. Tom looked over his shoulder, An eyebrow raised at Sarah as if to say, "This wasn't what we planned." "Maybe it's perfect," Sarah whispered back, feeling the frustrating knot in her stomach loosening just slightly. The laughter returned, blending with the aroma of cookies, and for a moment, hope hung in the air once more. The unexpected visitor had managed to breach some of the tension as they gathered around the table. They began to nibble on cookies and share stories. Mike regaled them with tales of his own family's holiday struggles, the laughter infectious. Even Evelyn started to share lighter memories from their childhood, stories of snowball fights and Christmas lights gone awry. With each shared laugh, Sarah felt the warmth grow. But Tom's gaze drifted back to Evelyn, and Sarah sensed the shift in his heart. He might be willing to open up, to let those remaining shadows of their past drift away. Yet, just as the mood began to feel more harmonious, a cell phone chimed from the kitchen, the sound slicing through the festive air like ice shattering through glass. Everyone paused, eyes darting, clearly startled. "Is it your phone, Tom?" Sarah asked, instinctively checking her own pocket. She didn't want anything dousing the moment now. "It's not mine," Tom answered, but his voice had tightened. All eyes turned to the kitchen, where the phone continued ringing, insistent and loud. A sense of dread clung in the air, threatening to undo what they had just begun to piece together. "What if it's bad news?" Evelyn asked, her voice low, the concern rising back up just as quickly as the laughter had faded. Suddenly they all felt the weight of the moment shift. What had begun as a reunion was transforming yet again, and the uncertainty loomed large. With a glance at Tom, she realized they had come so far only to be thrown off course. What lay ahead? Would they find clarity or chaos as they faced what was still to come? Would this Christmas hold the answers they had sought all these years? Before Sarah could even decide if she should check the phone, Jake piped up, "Shouldn't someone get it?" She hesitated, mind racing. The answers awaited, but so did the fear of what they might reveal. The ringing grew louder, filling the room with a restless urgency that amplified everyone's anxiety. Sarah could feel her heart in her throat, the anticipation pulling her tighter with each second that ticked by. After a shared glance filled with unspoken tension, she stepped away from the crowd, her feet carrying her to the kitchen against the chaotic pull of her worry. Each step echoed in her mind. Who could it be? Her fingers grazed the cool surface of the countertop as she reached for the vibrating phone, staring at the unfamiliar name flashing on the screen. It was a number she didn't recognize. Uncertainty buzzed through her like static in the air. "Just answer it," Tom's voice chimed from behind her, though it carried an edge of apprehension. She turned toward the doorway, where the group was huddled together, eyes wide with expectation. Mike's cheerful demeanor had dimmed, and even Jake and Emily seemed frozen in concern. Taking a deep breath, she accepted the call, the sound of her inhale barely sinking into the growing stillness. "Hello," she said, her voice catching slightly. "Sarah. It's me, David." The voice on the other end sent a jolt through her. David, her brother, who had been distant for years, resurfacing out of nowhere. She barely contained a gasp as realization hit her. His name had become a ghost in her memories, a shadow in the background of her life. "David," she repeated, her heart racing. "What, sorry to call like this, but I heard you might need me." He sounded almost hesitant, and in that hesitation, she sensed a vast ocean of unresolved feelings. Outside the doorway, Tom shifted uncomfortably. The rest of the group's tension sparked with new energy, an invisible current connecting them all through the kitchen doorway. It was so much to handle. She feared they might lose the fragile moment they had just reclaimed. "Need you?" The words fell from her lips, surprised at the weight they carried. "It's been so long, I know," he interrupted, his voice almost pleading. "I've been thinking about everything that's happened. We can't keep pretending." Sarah clenched her jaw, the flood of emotions battling within her. The hurt, the anger, the longing for something lost, it all surged to the surface. "What do you want, David?" There was silence on the line, long enough for Sarah's mind to whirl through memories of playful summers, whispered secrets, and the fracture that had driven them apart like an uncrossable chasm. "I want to fix things. With you. With us." His voice softened. "I want to be there. Can we talk?" For a moment it felt like time stood still. Every shared laugh, every tear shed amongst friends, every secret held in the warmth of that room, felt suddenly heavy with possibilities. They had all gathered to heal, seeking connection, to mend the threads that had woven them together in simpler times. And yet, here was another thread, fraying but still connected. Finally, she took a breath that felt like a healing balm. Okay, I don't know what that looks like, but we can try. Outside, concern morphed into curiosity. Sarah could feel every set of eyes on her, their collective breaths waiting for her next move. It was a moment she could never have anticipated, and yet it felt like the first step toward something monumental. Great, David replied, his relief palpable even through the phone. I'll head over. Yeah, but it might be a little crowded, she warned, glancing back at the kitchen doorway, where her friends peeked through, anxiously aware of the changes stirring in the air. Crowded can be good. Just don't shut me out completely this time. Okay? As the call ended, Sarah lingered in the kitchen, her heart racing with the weight of what lay ahead. She turned back to find Tom studying her, a question in his eyes. She offered a tentative smile, knowing that things were about to change again, the fragile balance tipped toward an uncertain future. Could they face the past when it caught up to them in such unexpected ways? Would David's arrival bring healing or chaos? The mix of hope and apprehension hung in the air. And Sarah felt the chill of potential looming. Stepping back toward the living room, she heard the muffled laughter in the background, a reminder of what they had just found. Now, another piece was about to enter their mosaic of stories, and she had no idea how the threads would intertwine. But what she didn't expect was the familiar knock of fate ringing at her door once more. The knock shattered the silence, resonating like a heartbeat within the stillness of the house. Sarah's breath caught as she stood frozen in the living room, the laughter from her friends fading into a low murmur. Every ounce of excitement and anxiety swirled inside her. She exchanged a quick glance with Tom, who lifted an eyebrow, his expression a mix of curiosity and caution. Should I get it? Sarah asked, her voice barely rising above the tension. Tom nodded, stepping aside for her to pass through the kitchen. With each step toward the door, her heart drummed a frantic rhythm. She could imagine David on the other side, how he might look after all these years, the same brother she used to play with, who had grown so distant. Taking in a shaky breath, she grasped the doorknob and turned it. As the door swung open, David stood there, a hesitant smile tugging at the corners of his lips. He looked older, wearier, but his eyes, the same bright eyes she remembered, held a spark that ignited a flicker of hope deep within her. Hey, he said softly, almost shy, as if testing the waters of their frayed bond. Hey, she responded, her voice steadier than she felt. Behind her, the laughter in the living room floated through the air, and David's gaze flicked toward the sound, apprehension washing over his features. This isn't a great time, is it? No, it's fine, she replied, forcing a smile that she hoped would soothe his nerves. Just a gathering with friends, everyone's here to unwind, I guess. Can I come in? His question was cautious, as if he feared the answer. She stepped aside, letting him in, and felt the room shift. Her friends had moved closer, curiosity evident in their eyes. David's presence filled the space, igniting a mixture of apprehension and anticipation directed toward her brother, who had once been a crucial part of their lives. Everyone, this is David, she introduced him, her voice trembling just slightly. Hey, he offered sheepishly, his gaze darting from one familiar face to another. The group exchanged glances, unsure how to react to this ghost from Sarah's past. How is it going, man? Mike finally stepped forward, breaking the ice with his trademark ease. Been a minute, huh? Yeah, a long minute, David replied, a hint of laughter accompanying the discomfort. While the casual conversation started, Sarah watched David closely. She could see he was trying to relax, loosen up. Yet beneath the surface she felt bubbles of emotion welling up inside him, and undoubtedly, inside her too. As the evening wore on, tales of past adventures weaved in and around David's tentative contributions. The air filled with laughter, but it felt distant to Sarah. She was caught in a tangle of feelings, joy that he was here, but also fear of the bombs waiting to drop. When the conversation drifted to their childhood, Sarah noticed David's light dim slightly at the mention of their parents. Their shared history morphed into something heavy, shadows of equally lovely and heartbreaking memories swirling just beneath the surface. Remember the snowman we built? He said suddenly, a smile creeping back as he reminisced. We made it way too tall and it fell over. Sarah couldn't help but laugh, the memory rushing back warm and vivid. Right. And we had to explain to Mom why we were soaked through by the end of it. He chuckled, the tension easing just a little. But then silence fell and the laughter faded. A heaviness settled back in and Sarah caught David's eye. It was a fleeting moment of understanding this bond still existed, but it was fragile, and their past loomed between them like a wall. Taking a leap, she said softly, "We really do need to talk." David nodded slowly, the seriousness of her words hanging in the air. The laughter from the living room faded into the background as she sensed everyone leaning in, whether they realized it or not, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. But what Sarah didn't know was that the conversation ahead had the power to either bring them closer than ever or, perhaps, shatter the fragile piece they had just begun to stitch together. Could their family be repaired? Or would past wounds reopen with the truth? Sarah took a deep breath, the weight of her unspoken words wrapping around her like a heavy blanket. The room shifted again and suddenly, their laughter faded into an echo, leaving a stillness full of unasked questions and unshared fears. She felt Tom's reassuring presence beside her, grounding her in a moment that felt all too monumental. "David," she began, her voice soft but firm, "there are things we need to address. Things that felt unresolved. After everything that happened." He shifted on his feet, the moment stretching out. She could see the uncertainty flickering in his eyes. "I know," he murmured, rubbing the back of his neck, a gesture that reminded her of their childhood. It brought back feelings she had buried so deep. "I just didn't know how to start. Maybe we could, I don't know, just try to be honest. We've both been." She paused, searching for the right words, in different worlds. "The things that happened, Sarah," he interrupted gently yet firmly. "I'm not the only one who shut down. You disappeared too. We lost each other amidst all that chaos." His words settled like stones in her stomach. It was the truth. The aftermath of their family's unraveling had left both of them grappling in their own ways. Lost but unable to admit it. "Maybe we can find a way back?" She said it almost as a plea, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't want it to keep being this way." Before David could respond, Sarah's friends were shifting restlessly. They were drawn in, yet they sat there, unsure of how to navigate this sudden wave of vulnerability. It felt unfair. They had just begun to reconnect, and now a storm loomed overhead. "Hey, how about a drink?" Mike suggested awkwardly, raising his glass in an attempt to break the ice that had formed. "Can't have a family reunion without drinks, right?" David smiled gently, grateful for the distraction, yet Sarah could see his heart wasn't in it. The smile faded almost as quickly as it appeared. Their connection was still teetering on the edge, and the reality of their past hovered ominously. "I appreciate that, Mike," David said, his voice steady now, "but I really do want to talk about what's making me feel uneasy." A wave of silence washed over them again. A shared tension pulsed through the air. Sarah nodded, letting him know he didn't have to carry the weight alone. "Then let us just say it," she urged. "We can figure it out together." "Mom and Dad, they weren't the same after the divorce," he started, his voice quiet but firm. "We were kids and yet I felt like I had to take care of everything. I thought it was my job to hold it together. I thought if I was strong you'd be okay too." She felt a rush of empathy wash over her and wanted to reach out, to reassure him that he wasn't alone in that struggle. "But David," she replied softly, "you didn't have to be. We couldn't hold it together. Not back then. Not alone." The two of them locked eyes, the unspoken understanding drawing them closer. Felt like the first step. It was raw, but in the midst of their reminiscence, the connection began to strengthen, hinting at a path forward. Almost like a challenge, a sudden thought crossed Sarah's mind. What if we changed things? What if we made amends not just with each other, but with everything that separates us? Maybe we could celebrate together the way we used to. David's brows furrowed, pondering her suggestion. "You mean really team up?" "Yeah. If we can weather this storm, maybe we can create some new memories too." The room simmered with the possibility. Her friends glanced around, reflecting Sarah's optimism, but David's expression remained a mix of hope and doubt. "Okay, let us do it," he said finally, glassy-eyed but resolute. But she didn't see the shadow lurking in the back of his gaze. Unbeknownst to her, David had kept secrets that could change everything again, deep regrets that still haunted him. What would happen when those truths, which loomed quietly, finally came to light? She awoke a sliver of hope, but shadows also danced uninvited around them. Would this Christmas be worth it, or would it sweep them under once more like a tidal wave? As the night unfolded, laughter roared around the table, its warmth mixing with the aroma of delicious food. But the air held an electricity that crackled with tension. Sarah's heart beat rapidly, feeling the pulse of every unspoken word swirling through the room. They were a tapestry woven from the threads of pain and joy, each moment a stitch bringing them closer or ready to unravel. David shifted uncomfortably in his chair, the facade of casualness fading as he sensed everyone's eyes upon him. "I think we've all wanted a moment like this," he began, his voice steady despite the weight of his words. "But it's been so long since we shared the real stuff." In that fleeting moment, Sarah saw the man she remembered in the little boy standing in front of her. The little boy who had once dressed as a snowman for Halloween. "Yeah, we've hidden from the real talks for too long," Sarah admitted, clarity breaking through the haze of her imagination. "What if we laid it all on the table? Everything about our past, about each other? No more running." A palpable silence enveloped the room as everyone absorbed her suggestion. Tom leaned forward, showing support with his bright eyes. "I've been where you are, David. Life can split us apart, but that doesn't mean you can't find your way back." Jake and Emily, innocent and bright, didn't grasp the complexities fluttering around them, but sensed something significant was taking shape. They giggled and played in a corner, a symbol of hope, a reminder that childhood joy can still bloom amid struggles. David looked captivated, his shoulders relaxing. "All right," he conceded, breath escaping his lips like a small invisible weight lifted. The acceptance swept through Sarah. Could it be this simple? Or was it merely the calm before another storm? "Let us start with something simple," Sarah continued, leaning in, her voice softening. "Tell me how you felt when all of this went down. Can we share that commitment to be real?" Her heart ached for the conversation, each word a step toward healing buried wounds. With a small nod, David began to share. "I felt like I should have protected you, Sarah." His voice trembled slightly, laden with the years of personal blame that had clung to him. "I was supposed to be the big brother, but I didn't know how to be there for you." Tears welled up in his eyes, pure vulnerability spilling forth like a healing rain. "David, it wasn't your fault," Sarah said, her own eyes glassy with understanding. "You were just a kid like me. We were both lost. It wasn't on you to hold everything together." The room breathed easier, an atmosphere of progress enveloping them. Sarah felt the room's warmth expand, everyone lifting together not just as individuals, but as a community willing to face shadows and embrace the light of connection. Then came Evelyn, stepping forward hesitantly. "Can I chime in? I've watched the two of you over the years, but I stayed silent thinking I wouldn't know how to help." Her voice echoed a note of regret that tinged the air. "But this family isn't just you two. We're all part of the equation." Her words cast waves of courage, and slowly, others joined in, one by one piecing together their stories, confessions flowing like the merriment surrounding them. It was simple yet profound. Their voices began to merge into a symphony of healing, a sound that resonated with unity. Time began to dissolve, and laughter returned, more genuine this time, threaded with honesty. With every shared secret, the world around them faded, the lingering shadows of the past held back by the light of newfound awareness. The door swung open again, not to create chaos but to invite in an unexpected guest, Tom's childhood friend, Lizzie, standing there with her arms full of holiday decorations, ready to lend a hand in celebration. "Hope I'm not interrupting. I figured you could use a hand with more merriment." Her presence brought a spark of life, weaving seamlessly into the fabric of connection already forming. "You're just in time," Sarah exclaimed, embracing her with open arms. "We're building something beautiful here." As they began to hang lights, Lizzie turned to David. "Hey, is that you, David? Long time no see." The past quickly danced out of hiding, their childhood overshadowed by grown-up struggles. But somehow within that moment, familiarity washed over. "You too, Lizzie." David's smile was brighter. It held the echoes of lost childhood dreams. For the first time, Sarah saw the real David shining through the darkness, welcoming hope back into his heart. As the hours continued deep into the night, memories of the past began to dissolve, redefining the lineage of their family bonds and friendships. They feasted, laughing and sharing stories that anchored them in love and community. Laughter transcended the boundaries of pain, forging resilience anew. Finally, As the snow outside settled into the stillness of night, they gathered around a table overflowing with kindness, and a sense of purpose wrapped around them. Sarah knew that while shadows would always exist, they had the strength to connect and transcend. With radiant hearts and laughter spilling forth like snowflakes, they all stood together, arms around one another, letting the spirit of Christmas swell within them. They had truly transformed this gathering into an interconnected family, illuminating the essence of love and connection. "May this be just the beginning," Sarah declared, the weight of her heart suddenly feeling light. "Here together we can weather any storm." And as they raised their glasses under twinkling lights, the warmth of renewed bonds sparked a legacy of hope that would carry them through many more winters to come. So remember, dear friends, when times get tough, let love and community guide you. Embrace the shadows, weave your stories, and open your hearts. And now you need to subscribe immediately to this channel to not miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. We can't do this without your support. Comment your reactions and feelings about this heartwarming ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support means the world.